Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Politically Incorrect Knitters. I am Deplorable Knitter, and my guest, my host, my lovely Aunt Pinkava, has failed to join us today, but lucky for me, I still have company. We are joined by Liz Clothier. Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely.
And I want to remind you guys, we're still doing our giveaway. You can get a copy of Cody Schlegel's Odyssey Tale, which is a great non-woke story, and a skein of Chicken Lady fingering weight yarn in a one-of-a-kind colorway. So very pretty. Make sure you comment on our video, and that is going through the end of the month. So we'll have a winner in the next couple weeks. And if you can't wait for your Chicken Lady yarns, make sure you use the code PIK July 20 to get 20% off of anything in her store. And if you need any notions, don't forget to check out The Perfect Heist. She does all kinds of different handmade stitch markers and shawl pins and anything that you need to spice up your knitting. So make sure you check her out. Use the code SmallBiz60 and you can get 60% off of anything in her store. So Liz, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm a mom of two. I live in North Las Vegas in Nevada, where it's very hot right now. So as you can see, I've got my fan going. I started crocheting when I was 5, and then I started knitting about 5 years ago because I could never learn how to knit. My mother tried to teach me, but it just never clicked. And then YouTube taught me because I wanted to make socks, and crocheted socks are not comfortable. So I taught myself through YouTube.
Kinds of patterns. Yeah, people have all kinds of patterns for them, and they don't look.
No, I tried.
I do both. Yeah.
I tried to crochet them and they just weren't comfortable. So I decided to learn how to knit. So I got one of those nooks, the crochet hooks that you knit with. And I learned the stitches, and then I learned with the knitting needles through YouTube. So
that's cool. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, it's a crochet hook with a hole in the end that has a cord. And you knit with it, and you pull the cord on the stitches to simulate the second knitting needle.
Interesting.
And then, but it's actually crocheting the hook doing knit stitches. And I learned to do that because I wasn't a knitter. And then I started watching all the knitting podcasts because at the time there were not a lot of crochet podcasts. And then YouTube taught me how to knit, mostly Arnie and Carlos, because I Norwegian purl and I continental knit. So I learned from them because as a crocheter, it was easier to do it that way. I can't English knit. My hands don't work that way. I think it's from crocheting so long.
That's funny because I do both, and I'm still an English knitter. I still flick. But I just finished a little guy.
Oh, that's adorable. Is that for your class, or is that a gift?
No, my class is actually going to be woodland animals this semester, so I need to get on it. We're going to make a fox and a hedgehog and a mushroom and, different things. I'm actually organizing a little craft fair at a small farmer's market store in our area. And so since I'm organizing it, I'm obviously going to have a booth, and people love to buy little things. So I've been making a few. I got a jellyfish in the works, and
that's adorable. Things. Those are very cute.
Oh, thank you. But so you're a designer. So you've only been knitting 5 years, and then you were like, hey, I might as well just design stuff.
I have a terrible habit of not being able to follow a pattern strictly because with crocheting, it was just after you've done it so long, you know how to do things and make shapes. So if I had a pattern, I would alter it to fit. So with knitting, I'm a larger size, and not all the patterns are designed for larger sizes, which I'm fine with because I think people shouldn't blanket design for every single 1,000 size out there because not every garment looks right on every size. So for me, if there was a pattern I liked that didn't come in my size, I had to learn how to make it come in my size. So and it kind of went from there. And then Tina, our friend from Wented Yarn and Fibers, and I met, and we did a knit along. She had a colorway called Idea Pathogen, and this was after the Ravelry Maria Tuscan nonsense. And I designed the block tat, and we did a knit along for that. And that was the beginning. Yeah, the block tat, we were blocked because she got blocked from several people on Twitter. So the hat came from there because it's block shapes. And so people who just see it just say, oh, it's blocks, but really it means, you know, about how we were blocked by people on Twitter, other knitters and woke knitters and things. So, and that was the beginning of it. So that was my first one.
I remember that knit along, and I didn't realize that that's when you started. I had assumed you had been doing it for longer. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that was the first one. And we did a knit along, and it was a lot of fun. And Tina's the best because she comes out with amazing colorways, and she defends the knitters like nobody's business. And it's nice that we have people like her in our corner. And so, and she has new yarn coming out. So I'm excited for her new yarn collection because some of our friends are going to be in that collection.
Oh, really?
Some of our online friends. In fact, Mikey, who you had on, is going to have a colorway.
That's exciting.
So yeah, so I'm hoping that I'm going to design some things for her and her yarn. So because she's the best, but she's the one who got me started, encouraged me to put the design out and everything. Because we were talking on Instagram, and she's like, "Well, I'll send you yarn, make the design, and we'll do a knit along." Like, okay. And that was the push to get me to do it. And I mostly have hats and cows online. I have my first sweater, which is the paisley, very Perry paisley, which I did for Tabitha from Murder Knits. And it's knit and Chicken Lady Fiber Arts. She came up with Paisley's own colorway, very Perry paisley. And then, so that one's my first sweater design on the website. So it's kind of exciting.
A really, really pretty sweater. I pretended I was going to test knit it for her, but that didn't work out.
Oh, you started it.
I did start it several times, and then I got distracted by something else, and then it's still just the neck. But it's a nice pattern. I did read the whole thing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Test knitters are the best people, honestly. Just because I've been so lucky to meet so many wonderful test knitters who give their time and their energy and their, you know, critiques that, you know, they don't get enough credit. Test knitters don't, because, you know, they make or break a pattern. And I'm new designer, like, so getting test knitters who will tell me the truth and say, hey, this doesn't work, or I don't like this, or why did you do that decrease on that hat? And it's kind of like, really keep knitting it. I promise it'll work out. And then they do. And it's like, oh, okay, I see. But the fact that they're willing to question and say, hey, I'm not sure about this, I really appreciate, because I could be way off and have no clue, you know, think it works and it doesn't. Like, you design. So, you know, sometimes you think something in your head, you figure it out and it makes perfect sense. But then someone else might look at it and say, what was this? So they're the best. I love the test knitters.
Yeah, test knitters really do make a difference. And I've had patterns where, like, the only reason that they're not out is because I know how to do it, but for me to write it onto a piece of paper, I just haven't gotten to the point where, like, I can make it make sense for other people. So I've got some that have been kind of just hanging around for a few years because I'm like, I don't know, man.
I have some garments that are the same way because I'm not sure how to grade them for different sizes because of the detailing and the patterning. So I need to learn more about design before I can put those patterns out. So they'll just be there until some point when I have the knowledge and the skill to make them.
And that's the thing about design. I mean, you're always learning. I think that there's some people that kind of have like a formula they use, and that's like their basis for most everything they make. But designers who are really pushing the envelope, they're constantly changing it up, and I think that that's cool. I don't push the envelope that much. I mostly make hats, but, you know, maybe someday I'll like come out of my shell.
Well, you did that shawl. You should put out that shawl pattern.
That's one of those ones that just needs to be written. So it'll come out.
I actually have a cardigan pattern with that same flower stitch in it. I have not gotten it written out because I've knit it so many times in different ways. I have to sit down and decide which way I like it the best and then figure it out for different sizes. So that's eventually at some point, Liz from You and Dye sent me some purple. She dyed a purple colorway for me for that. And it's just a matter of in my head getting it so that I can actually knit the sample and get it out there, because I have to knit the samples first, because sometimes what the design in my head is not what ends up, because I think it's going to work in my head. And then when you actually start knitting it and you realize, oh no, this does not work at all. And you have to rethink things.
I've had some things that I have thought were like amazingly brilliant ideas, and then I start to knit it and I'm like, what was I smoking when I was thinking about this? Like, it is not even close to like looking like anything. Like,
have you
it's a
ever come up
process.
with one and given it to your mom to knit that happened to, where she's going to you? What were you thinking here?
Yeah, but that's generally before I give it to her though. She gets, before I give it to her, she and I've already talked about it, because if it's
Okay.
weird and I can't explain it, then I've already been like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. So it
Gotcha.
helps.
Yeah, it's nice you have her though, that she can help you knit though, because I wish I had a sample knitter.
Yeah.
Or someone who, you know, could, because especially with garments and doing them plus sizes too, it's like having someone else knit who's also a larger size knit it too, for me to would be great, because then I know if my calculations work or not.
Yeah. Between her and then I have a tech editor who's amazing. And so between the two of them, like if I have an issue, we work it out before it gets too far, which is nice, because yeah, like sometimes it's great in your head and then it just isn't what you thought. So
no, I know I've had several patterns that I'm like, oh, this is going to be great stitch pattern. It's going to make such a good hat. And then I start to knit it and it just doesn't work. And it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe not. Maybe not.
Fashionably late as always, and Pinkava has come into the studio. Thanks for joining us today, Anne.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I'm late. I mean, you could blame the time difference, but I should have just set an alarm. It was one of those things where I'm like, oh yeah, I have time, and I was doing other stuff and it was bad. So hello, everyone.
Hey, Anne.
That's okay.
It's okay. We're blaming Romania, you know.
That's all right. Well, with the last live stream that we did, the live from the Knitting Wars, and you know, we announced that Tina was going to be on. She slept through it. So
yeah.
That was
I know she messaged me on Twitter. She's like, oh crap, I was supposed to be on the panel.
That's all
I
right.
wondered, but you know,
right.
It
happens.
It looks like we're gonna have plenty more of those. People seem to enjoy it, so
yeah,
they'll keep
it
coming.
Was fun.
There'll be plenty of time.
It was definitely fun. I mean, it's a good combination of people. I mean, I can see you guys changing people out who can make it or can't make it during certain times, but you always have to have Tabitha, because she throws stuff out there that nobody expects, and that's just who she is, and it's the best.
Yeah.
So
she's certainly
Tabitha.
Yeah, she was exciting. But and hey, for our friends watching that didn't see it, Anne and I started a new little offshoot. It's a live show that we're doing right now. We're doing it on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Once Anne's back from Romania, that may change, but it was just a live show. We had on Neil from Black Magazine, we had Tabitha from Murder Knits, and we had Chicken Lady Fiber Arts, Lynn, our fabulous sponsor, and of course Anne and myself. And it was a lot of fun, and it was a lot of nonsense, which was really funny. And there were some things, I got broken at one point. I couldn't even talk because the things people were saying, I was laughing too hard. So and it's mostly knitting. It's not as political. It's not even mostly knitting, it's mostly nonsense. So if you guys didn't check it out, our next one's
we talked about different knitting needles.
You did. We talked about knitting needles and crocheting and who was crocheting, and there was timed challenges, so that was good.
Yeah,
but let's face it, Tabitha's gonna win in a time knitting challenge. We all know this.
Yeah,
because Tabitha knits faster.
There might be a dark horse that comes in out of the blue, and you never know.
Well, then they have to be a fast knitter, because she has 97 projects to make this year, and it's only July.
Yeah, and every time you design something new, Tabitha offers to test knit it for you.
Yep.
Before we start recording, you were telling me about the Murder Knit sweater.
Yeah, it's a unfortunately I don't have my sample here. It's a belted cardigan. Oversized belted cardigan, kind of like a bathrobe shape, because if you've ever watched Murder Knits podcast, which is a true crime in knitting, Tabitha occasionally wears her bathrobe, and because of that she wanted a sweater, and so I said, well, I'll design you a cardigan that's got a bathrobe shape so that you can be cozy. So that's coming out in the fall. She and of course and a couple other people are test knitting it now. So it's a simple DK weight, oversized not a lot of shaping, just throw it over everything to keep warm and cozy kind of sweater. So that's coming out soon. And then I have a hat coming out Monday, which is in Chicken Lady, her deprogrammed colorway, which is the Keep Calm and Carry On, after our friend Carrie Smith. So that should be up by Monday on my website, lizclothierdesigns.com. And if you've knit with Chicken Lady's heavier weight Aran weight cashmere, you don't want to knit with any of her other yarn because it is so incredibly soft. It's like from now on, I just want to knit in this because it's like so very soft. I was thinking it was more for some reason usually cashmere blends are usually fingering. And when I ordered it, I thought, okay, fingering. And then it was the heavier. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, now I'm going to have to make some other design challenge because it's not going to be a fingering weight hat, but it's the softest yarn. So if you get a chance, get that base from her because I hope she keeps it because it's incredibly soft. So
that's cool. I haven't come across that one yet, but the next
I forget
order,
what she calls it. I forget which base she calls it, but it's really nice. And the deprogrammed colorway is so pretty with all the blues.
Yep.
I have a sweater quantity of this too, but I don't know what it's going to be yet. But I had to have the sweater quantity because I'm a blue person. So
and you do a lot of sweater knitting too.
I do, despite the fact I don't wear many of them.
I was going to ask you, I mean, you told me it was going to be what, 112 today where you are.
Yep.
So when do you have the opportunity to wear those?
When we go up to Utah, my daughter goes to school there and we have family. So when we go there in the winter, then I can wear them. Like when everyone else is wearing a heavy coat, I'm just wearing a sweater because that's my chance to show them off. I mostly knit my samples in my daughter's size as well. Just it helps me check the sizing and then because she wears sweaters all the time, even not so much in summer, but in spring, like even here when it's in the 80s, she'll throw a sweater on. She's just naturally cold. So she gets every design, she gets one too, and she models most of them for me. So she's the one who wears the most of them.
That's cool.
Yeah, occasionally, I mean, we do get colder weather here. We do get in the 40s in the winter.
Oh.
So we do have sweater weather for a brief period of time, and then it's, over. And then it starts getting hot and then really hot and then hotter than everybody else and then gets back to less hot again. So I do get to wear them a little bit, but like two of our friends in chat are going to make the penguano in September from Stephen West. And I'm like, nope, I don't need a heavy penguano. That one I will never wear, but more power to the rest of them for knitting them. But yeah, I don't wear the sweaters a ton, but I love making them. And when I do wear them, it's cardigans because hot flashes. And
that's all I was thinking of when you said your daughter wears them in 80-degree heat. Man, I can barely wear like regular clothes in 80-degree heat. I can't.
Well, she won't
throw on a sweater.
She won't wear a heavy one, and she won't. Like I have a couple that I've made her that are like 3/4 sleeve or just above the elbow, so she'll wear those over a tank top or something. Because like air conditioning blowing on her bothers her. So if she's out with friends or something and the air's blowing on her, she'll throw something on just because she doesn't like to feel that.
No, I do get that too, because everything is pretty heavily air conditioned there, I imagine. And
yes,
it gets cold after you've been in it a while. So that
it
does make
does.
sense.
Yeah, you don't want to be here without air conditioning. It is not pleasant. I've lived through a summer without it, and it wasn't as hot as it was now, but it was not very pleasant at all. So I do not wish that on anybody.
Are you originally from Vegas, or
No.
Are you okay?
I'm originally from North Carolina, and then I grew up in New Jersey, but I was on vacation in Myrtle Beach, and my husband was in the Army, and he and friends were staying at Myrtle Beach for the weekend. And I met him that weekend, and then he and his friends went back because they had to be back on base. They came back down the next weekend. My friend and I had stayed a week and a half on vacation. So we met them twice, and then we kept in touch and kept dating. And through the whole time when he was in Desert Storm, he would call me and we'd send letters back and forth. And he's from Vegas. So when he got back out of the military, he came back here. And then eventually I moved out here, which, well, my brother and sister had moved away. My mom had died and my dad had moved away from our home. He sold our house and moved to Pennsylvania. So into a seniors community. So I wasn't going to live there with him. So I moved out here, and it wasn't as hot then as it is now. But you get used to it. I mean, you do get used to it. It's just, and like all our friends in chat, they talk about humidity, and I get that, but we also have the sun beating down on your head from 7 o'clock in the morning till like 10 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. So that's just something you have to learn to live with, and you have to drink water constantly if you're outside, especially. And that's what tourists have a big deal with it, because they won't realize how much, even they'll think inside the casino they're fine, but yeah, it's air conditioned, but it's still dry and you're still getting dehydrated. Okay. And when my husband worked security, they had people who would pass out at the slot machines or at the tables all the time because they were dehydrated and didn't realize it. Yeah, and they just cart them off and take them to the medical and get them some water. And I mean, it was crazy because people walk out on the strip, and you know, when 15 minutes, you're really dehydrated, so you have to drink lots of water. And occasionally we get rain, but not as much as we used to.
I wouldn't do well there. I don't care what kind of heat it is. I don't care if it's dry. I don't care. I'm not built for hot weather. I'm just not.
I don't know. We don't have mosquitoes.
Well, we don't have that many here in New York either. So how are the politicians there?
Let's see. Bad. We have mostly Democrats right now. Are part of the state Senate has taken over by the Democratic Socialists, and that's what they ran as. Our governor is Democrat. Hopefully he's going to get taken out in this election by one of the Republicans. I'm not crazy about the one who's probably going to take him out, who's our current sheriff, but he's better than the Democrat who's there now. We did have a Democratic mayor, Oscar Goodman, for years, and he was a good mayor. Like, he put Las Vegas first. Like, even though he was an old-timey mob lawyer from back in the day, he actually was pro Las Vegas, pro tourism, you know, really, like he's the one who wouldn't shake hands with Obama when he came to town, because Obama said people shouldn't waste their money going to Vegas and places like that in a speech once. And so Oscar wouldn't even shake his hand when he came to Vegas. That was a huge deal. Hopefully our two senators are going to get voted out. We've got good prospects. Cortez Masto, and I forget the other one's name, but they're Harry Reid clones pretty much. And so hopefully we will get some more decent politicians in, and we will get at least constitutional carry through. I'm not going to hold my breath, but hopefully someday we'll get that through. I'm sure abortion will continue in Las Vegas because they're not going to change that. I doubt very seriously. We're too close to California. So pretty much our current governor, whatever Newsom does, he does. So when there was lockdowns, if Newsom locked down, we locked down. If, you know, Newsom closed schools, we closed schools. So hopefully.
And you had mask mandates for ages too.
We did. In fact, my son's work at AT&T is back to masks now, because I guess there was a increase in cases supposedly. So now AT&T is making them wear masks again.
Wow.
So it's nonsense. Cloth masks that you're moving around all the time is really not doing a single thing, but that's what they have to wear at work. And at first it was like, I didn't want to wear them, and not every place required them. So it's like, okay, if this grocery store requires it, then I'll just go shop in the other grocery store, and then everybody, and they wouldn't even let you in the grocery store without it. So that became mainly the only place I went, because I didn't want to wear it anywhere else, but I only wore it when I had to go places where they required it. So it was insane.
Yeah, I mean, we had it here for a long time too, and at the end I just stopped wearing it because I was like, I don't care, it's not doing anything. Everybody knows it's not doing anything.
I saw a news article today that your governor is her quarantine hospitals and stuff, she's defying the ruling and still having her quarantine hospitals and things.
I haven't seen it yet. Honestly, I try not to listen to what she's doing. She's the worst governor ever, and she was not elected, and I just can't stand her. She is obviously one of those people that is out for herself. She is going to do what she thinks is best for New York City and for her pocket, and I just can't stand the woman. It's weird though, because she was a politician in upstate New York, and she was in a city not horribly far from me, and she wasn't like this. I don't know, power and greed, or I don't know what happened exactly.
I think they changed their policy based on where they're running for, because Gillibrand, I know before she was
wasn't
a
awful at
senator,
first.
she was pro NRA until
Yeah.
she got to the big time where it didn't do her any advantage, and then she wasn't. So I think they changed their politics for what they think is going to be the best choice for where they're running.
That makes sense. And I mean, really, anybody who's running for a statewide thing here, they are pandering to New York City. They could care less what the rest of us think, because a lot of upstate New York is actually super conservative, but they don't care because that's not where the votes are.
That's Nevada. I mean, Las Vegas and Reno are probably the most Democrat, and the rest of the state is not. But because the population centers are there, that's who wins. I mean, majority of the counties are not Democratic counties, but
which
the
was
the
the brilliance of the Electoral College.
Yeah, which they're trying to change. There's some thing they're working on right now with a bunch of Democrats and Republicans to do something about the Electoral College Act. I don't think they can really change much, because doesn't that have to go back to the states? Anything to do with the Electoral College? I thought they had to okay anything.
One would think, but
I'm not sure how that works, but I just saw a map of the US. It was like Turning Point USA or one of those people. It might not have been them, but it was a whole red map, and then there were these blue spots on it. And that's the thing that people don't get. Yeah, there's a lot of liberals, but if you look, they only represent like 100th of the population of the actual landmass of the country. Like it's ridiculous. They tell me.
Yeah, it's more liberal in the high population centers.
Yep.
Well, yeah, because those tend to use more social services.
Right.
So, and more government programs, more buses, public transportation. So they're going to vote for whatever, policies they think are going to give them more money for those things. Whereas people who, have a 80-acre farm, have to drive 20 miles to get to the store, have a different perspective. And, their perspective shouldn't be any less valid just because, there aren't 50 farmers in, a state where, if it was liberal, there'd be 100,000 people in the same area.
Right. And I'm definitely for, because we have, like with New York, and you said with Nevada and everywhere, that that I think there should be the Electoral College on a state level too. Minnesota has that problem all the time. It's Minneapolis who runs everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of states that way. It seems Baltimore runs Maryland, and Baltimore is, really corrupt.
Right.
Because that's where Closie's from.
I thought she was from California.
No, her father and brothers were both, her father was mayor of Baltimore. Her brothers were senators in Maryland. Yeah, her whole family is all from the political end and from Baltimore. That's where she got her start. Yeah.
Yeah, but what you were saying, Anne, about electoral colleges in the states, I mean, here in New York, during the presidential election, like 0.5% of the votes were in, and Biden was declared the winner. Because there's not even a chance. My husband's going, I don't even know why we go vote, because we'll never make a difference. And I'm like, well, we still have to go vote. But I get where you're coming from, because it's true. How can you call anything with 0.5% in? Like,
yeah, I think we need to concentrate on the more local and state elections, because those are the ones who are actually making these policies. And yeah, Biden will do his executive orders, but I think there's been a lot of change since so many Republican took over state Congresses and Senates in a lot of states, and they've been able to change and get rid of some of these bills because of that, because they have the majority in the state legislatures. And I think we need to focus more on that too, is getting people in the state legislatures at that level, because they can undo a lot of the damage that the federal does just on a state level, and say, okay, well, that might not be a federal thing, but state law says we can do this or we can't do this. So
No, I was going to say that, state level, we've also seen with sheriffs and states attorneys and different positions
Mhm.
like that. We've seen the havoc that they've caused when they can, be poor. And, getting good people into those positions is very important too.
Yeah.
I think too, there's too much bureaucracy and there are too many where unelected officials are making laws and making rules and regulations like that they shouldn't be. Like they got mad about the Supreme Court's EPA decision the other day, and it wasn't that the Supreme Court said the decision, what the EPA did was right or wrong. It was just that they were unelected officials making these laws, and it should have been something Congress did. So same way with Roe v. Wade. They didn't say, whether or not Roe v. Wade should be law, just said it shouldn't have been done the way through the Supreme Court. It's something Congress should have done. And that's where people aren't getting, it's the court's not saying you're wrong. They're just saying it was gone about the right way. And it was Congress's job to make laws, not bureaucrats.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we're having a lot of problem. There's a lot of agencies that make rules and regulations that are beyond their scope, and they're not getting reined in for that.
No, that's totally true. And a minute ago, you said something about hopefully getting constitutional carry in Nevada, but didn't the Supreme Court decision, didn't they say that everybody could carry because it's a right?
The recent one,
Yeah.
I think you can open carry. You just can't conceal
It's
carry.
the concealed carry.
Constitutional carry is concealed carry. And
Okay.
until we get rid of our Democratic legislature, that's never going to happen here.
Right. I mean,
but
it was totally poo-pooed here. Hochul immediately said no. But my thought on it is that did you guys hear about the kid who stopped a guy who was trying to do a mass shooting at the mall? They were both on gun-free zones, but this is an example of a bad guy with a gun on a gun-free zone and a good guy. It ended before it could start.
They were going after him on The View, saying he was illegally carrying a gun in a gun-free zone. We don't need vigilantes, that whole thing. It's like, well, if not, then there would have been more dead people. I mean, in 15 seconds, he took 10 shots, 8 went into the bad guy at 40 yards with a handgun. And if you've ever, tried to shoot 40 yards with a handgun, you have to be very good to do that. And the other 2 didn't hit anybody. So he was extremely, good at what he did. Yet 400 cops can stand around for 77 minutes because they're afraid of one kid.
Yeah.
With a rifle.
That's the thing, okay, so maybe he was breaking the rules, but he obviously knew how to use his weapon. He had trained with it. He was very, very good at using it. And that's the part that people need to, if you're going to let people carry, perhaps more training should be involved.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
That's totally great. It's great that he was able to stop it and prevent something horrific from happening.
Yeah,
exactly. Anyone who gets a gun should have to have training. Because just safety training to begin with, because a lot of people don't, because you can buy a gun without having to have any training. To get concealed carry permit, you have to go through a class. But I think anyone who buys a gun should have to have at least a basic level of training, which kids used to get in schools. It used to be kids would bring their rifles to school and they'd practice, and then they'd go after school and go hunting. It was a normal thing for a kid to have a rifle in their truck or in their car at school. It was not considered the way it is now. And yet so many more kids had access to guns then, and they did not have these shootings because they knew other people had guns. It's like if you're a bad guy and you don't know if the person next to you is concealed carrying or not, that's going to decide whether or not you're going to do something, because you don't want to go against someone who might shoot back.
Right.
So
exactly. And that's why they go after schools and movie theaters and malls, and because that's where people aren't carrying, and it's
they're less likely to get hurt in return
because they're cowards. Yes. And they don't want somebody to stop them. They don't want to, whatever.
School shootings are they drive me crazy because there's so many ways to negate what happens. And if we look how other countries do it, they don't have school shootings the way we do. And it's not that, guns are bad. It's just the way that they're set up, the way the school securities are. They're not trained. Like in Israel, every school has armed security. you don't have any issues in schools in Israel because majority of the citizens have guns because they all have to be in the military at some point. And yet you don't see them running into schools.
Perpetual threat of terrorism also, that they are very aware that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you don't see them.
Yeah, school shootings is also an act of terrorism in a sense, but I mean that they have specific people who constantly say that they want them dead in Israel. So,
yes. Yet, they realize that their children are, value and they should protect them. And I think we tell our children we don't value them because we put them in gun-free zones and we say, okay, bad guy, here they are. No one's going to defend them. Go get them.
Well, okay. So our friend Vaughn, who I'm sure a lot of viewers remember, she's a very anti-abortion, pro-life person. And she loves to say, if we don't value life at every stage, we can't appreciate it at any stage. Like very much if we live in a society that doesn't value life. And so it's easy to be like, hey, kids, go to the gun-free zone. You'll be fine. Like, it's
the sign says gun-free, so no guns.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the whole assault rifle thing, which is not a thing because that's a made-up term. And, they don't have any clue which gun is more dangerous. Like, I have a shotgun in our house. It's a semi-automatic shotgun. It's more deadly than an AR-15 because it's got a bigger round. And it's still a semi-auto. But if you were to look at this pretty wooden gun, you would look at it and think, oh, this isn't as scary because it's not as dangerous. But it is.
Yeah, and I have a nice shotgun with a pistol grip on it that looks real scary, but I have to load it every time or every other time. And so it's not as effective, but it looks scary. Makes that nice noise you hear that's scary.
I know. Yeah, it's kind of like what kind of car do you drive? I don't know, the green one. It's that level, but in gun world, that's like, I don't know. This one looks pretty scary. It's like
it's the cosmetics.
But it does.
And and they're like, oh well, no one needs an assault rifle to defend themselves. Yes, they do, because here's the thing: if someone's coming after me or my family, I want to get them before they get close. And a handgun is good up close. A rifle is good before they get, too close to your children. And, that's why it's like they say about war, we don't want to be invaded. We want to fight wars on someone else's shores, not on our own, because you don't want them to get close. It's the same thing, the same mentality. You don't want someone you want to be able to stop them before you're, 5 or 10 feet away from them and you need a handgun. You don't want it to get to that point.
Right.
But guns are scary, and it's always the gun's fault. And for the record, my guns have never killed anybody. I've got a better record than Alec Baldwin. So I heard one of them say that on one of the shows the other day, and it's true because he's still spouting off gun control stuff, and he's the last person in the world who should tell anybody about gun control at this point.
Yeah. Well, in his situation, I think that he would have gone far with some classes on what to do. I think that part of our problem in our society is that because people are scared of them, nobody's taught to respect them anymore. We have guns in our house, they are locked up, but also we have talked to our kids about, like, if for any reason this was ever out, you never touch it. This is not for you. It is. And when they're older, we will teach them how to properly use them, but
teach them gun safety now. Teach them, because even though you tell them not to touch them, some kid will find them and not know what to do. So you have to teach your kids to know, immediately go get an adult. You know what I mean? Well, because they do it's not going to be your kid. But it's not going to be your kid that's going to be the one that's tempted to touch them. It's going to be any other kid. And like my husband was an NRA gun instructor when he worked security. And so from the minute my kids were old enough, 2 or 3 years old, because he had guns, because he had a gun for work, and he taught them gun safety. Don't touch it, go get an adult. And then when they were older, this is the safe, don't. So since they've been toddlers, they've known about gun safety.
Right. I mean, obviously they know that they don't touch it and they should ever tell us if they ever come across one or anybody. But I'm talking about, like, they will be taught to respect the gun and how to properly use it and that kind of thing when they are a bit older. Right now, they're still on the young side for that kind of thing. But people don't have that respect for it. Your husband worked with guns. He had it around. They should know that but instead we're just scared of everything, and everybody's, oh, just no guns at all. Well, they're a tool, just like anything else. It's a tool that can be used, and when used properly, it's a good tool.
There was a kid who went on a murder spree a few years ago in California, and I think he shot a couple people, he stabbed a couple people, and he hit someone with a car because he ran out of bullets or something. In my mind, the people he stabbed and the people he killed with a car are just as dead as the ones he killed with a gun.
Right.
So blaming the gun and not blaming the fact that if someone wants to kill someone, they will find a way. You know, we have the internet. You can build or blow up anything you can find out how to do on the internet. Like, so blaming the tool to me is ridiculous, because if someone wants to kill a bunch of people, a bomb is way more devastating than a gun can be.
Right.
We have tons of explosions and
Mhm.
constant gun crime, or not gun crime, sorry, but explosives are the preferred way to kill lots of people. In certain European countries, they're like, oh, but we don't have your gun crime. Oh, great. Being exploded is, no, thank you.
Yeah. And somebody misusing a car or a knife doesn't mean that we should ban all cars and knives. It's just the same thing. But people get stuck on the guns because guns are scary. And they are if you don't know what to do with them. Until my husband taught me how to use it, I was scared of them. And now I know how to properly use them. And I don't love them, but I'm not scared of them either. There's a difference.
I moved out here. We'd never had guns at home because my mom didn't allow them. And my husband, he took me to the range and showed me and said, this is, you need to know. And now we have them for defense, and we go out shooting because if you're going to have a gun, you need to practice with it, because you don't want to be fumbling around, and you don't want to, have to be figuring out where everything, when a bad thing happens, you want to just be able to pick it up and do what you need to do. But we've always kept them locked away because you don't leave them out. You don't, leave them for where children can get them. I mean, all these shootings where, children find guns in the car and things like that. Just, if you have a gun, you keep track of that gun. Like concealed carry, you conceal it on your person, not in your purse, because you could sit your purse down and go to the bathroom, or someone could grab your purse and there's your gun. So,
right.
But now they're trying to change the law where they can sue gun companies, they said, who misrepresent the guns and then that are used for crimes. And I don't know how that works, because if someone kills someone with a car, does that mean I can sue Chevy because Chevy made the car? Or can I sue the dealership because they told me it was a, good car that was, had a lot of weight behind it? Like, where is the slippery slope once you start suing manufacturers for making the product the way it's supposed to be made?
Yeah. I mean, we could go after Ginsu knives for somebody who uses a kitchen knife to stab someone. I mean, it gets kind of ridiculous pretty quickly.
I'm surprised they don't do that in England.
For the old blunt force trauma.
More people die of blunt force trauma. More people in the US die of blunt force trauma than do of guns every year.
Yep.
But when used properly, hammers are tools. Like it's all propaganda anyway. That's really all it is.
I know. It is what it is.
I didn't mean to get us off on that tangent about
I know,
guns.
but
Sorry,
it was interesting. It was interesting. Sometimes you need tangents. Like we have our British friend in our other chat, who his country, they're not allowed to have guns, and we talk about them in chat sometimes, and he wishes he could, have guns in his country, but they don't, because some countries, they ban them. And if a government has to ban guns, then the government is doing something that it shouldn't be doing, because if it doesn't trust its citizens to defend themselves, then it's doing something wrong. Because we actually formed this country because we wanted to get away from a country that was tyrannical. So any government that starts taking away guns, nothing good ever happens.
Right.
Through history.
Yeah, and it's protection of life, certainly with a gun, but Neil mentioned a little bit that a statistic of all of these police departments that hadn't actually solved any crimes. Like, they hadn't solved big crimes like murder, but also if you're robbed, no policeman's even going to show up at your house. There's no, hey, there's no personal property rights. People can just come in and take anything and no consequences. Well, okay, definitely you want to defend yourself and your family, but also it's the, hey, nobody can just come into my house and steal stuff. That's not right.
Well, I just read too that Chicago is not investigating murders anymore because they don't
I
have
haven't
enough
seen
police,
that.
or
Right.
it's well, we got robbed before we lived where we in this house. We lived in a condo, and the week we moved in, while we were at our old place moving stuff over, someone broke in and stole all our computers, the kids' bikes, all the technology, called the cops. They came out, they did the whole fingerprint thing. They didn't actually investigate it. They just put everything that was stolen on their stolen property list. So if it's ever tried to pawn or whatever, then it'll come up. But they don't actually, our car got broken into. They didn't investigate it. The guy came out and looked at it and he says, okay. But he didn't even bother to take fingerprints.
Wow.
So they don't investigate those kind of crimes anymore.
That's really,
And
It's
the
really
cops
too
aren't
bad.
there to prevent crime. They're not there to protect you because they don't come till after a crime's either in the middle or afterwards. So if you want to be protected, you have to look at it yourself.
Mhm.
And sometimes a gun is the way to do it. Sometimes it's not, but did not allow people to have that option is wrong. And all
Yeah.
these politicians and celebrities who are anti-gun and telling people they shouldn't have guns, fine, then no more security for you. And then you live like the rest of us, because why is your life more valuable than my kid's life?
Exactly. And then there's the people who say, oh, well, when the founding fathers wrote the Constitution, they didn't mean these kinds of guns. And there was a letter that was written to one of them back in the day about using cannons. And the guy was like, no, use any force necessary to protect yourself.
How far does the arm go?
People could, private citizens could own cannons then. But also they knew about technology, because just in the time that the founders themselves were alive, guns had changed so much from, the technology just in their lifetime. So they knew technology was going to change. They never said specifically just these kind of arms. They wanted
just muskets.
They said the populace should be has the same availability of arms as the government, because how can you defend yourself if the government has all these overpowered things that you don't have access to?
Right. They were incredibly imaginative men in that they invented an entirely new form of government in which men could be free and not under monarchy. And many of them talked about eventually freeing the slaves, which is something that nobody had done in the history of mankind before. I don't think a little thing of, I think firearm technology may improve in the future. That wasn't tripping them up.
They always have to justify trying to take a right away. So, well, it wasn't in the Constitution that you could have an AR-15. True, it wasn't, but it was in the Constitution that the populace should have the same availability of weapons that the government does. So therefore, if the government has it or have access to it, then the populace should have access to it.
Right.
They were brilliant men. I mean, they were very foresighted, but they were men of their time, and trying to judge them by today's perceived standards is never going to be the same, because they lived in their times, and you can't expect people in history to have been perfect.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that they try to ruin or destroy everything because those people weren't perfect.
That's actually a really good way of putting it, because that's what happens so much nowadays is people are like, oh, well, they had slaves, so we can't listen to anything they said. They were living in a world where they had slaves. It's like when all of the sex scandals came out about like people in the 80s. Well, not that people should be like sexually harassing other people, but in the 80s, life was different. And so, like, should we like be going back and like punishing people for things that happened that aren't up to our standards now? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Well, it's like you can't acknowledge the good things someone did because they did bad things, evidently.
Yeah.
Well, and yes, look, we've evolved in no different things that they did not have knowledge or access to at their time. They were men of their times. They did the best they could. They set up to get rid of slavery. That was something that most of them wanted, but they knew they couldn't have gotten it at that point. But the Constitution was set up so that there could be amendments so that they could stop slavery. That was something many of them wanted. But we don't acknowledge that. Jefferson had slaves.
And
okay, he was kind of a jerk too, but he also wrote a brilliant, he wrote the Declaration, which was a brilliant document. So yeah, personally, he might have been a jerk, but
Oh,
he
come
actually
on.
did.
Most
I've seen
charming founding father, in my opinion.
You've seen 1776, obviously, then.
Of course. I also saw the guy who plays him at Williamsburg. He does a really excellent job talking about not just that he addresses the question of slavery and mentions all the different times documented in his letters and talking against it. And yes, he also had slaves, but also he was moving the ball. Like he was trying to get somewhere. That it was often said, you mentioned 1776, the musical, which they mention in there, and is also it was mentioned a lot of times in founding fathers' letters that they thought, get our own country first, then address slavery. That it's much more, it's like one thing at a time.
Well, they knew that the states that were
right.
They knew the states that were going to fight it were going to fight it. So they had to be established first. So they had, a hill to stand on, because they couldn't get our own country and also end slavery, because they knew that was going to be a breaking point. So they had to do the country first and then work on the individual things. And that's how we have the Bill of Rights. And then we also have amendments, because things have changed. Society has changed. What we consider right and wrong has changed, but it doesn't negate what they did. And it doesn't make them any lesser because of what they did, because of they don't have the same societal, things that we have that are considered right and wrong now. Yes, slavery is wrong, but there's still slavery going on in the world, and I don't see any of these people going after that.
I was about to say, it's that we often, so slavery in the founding of the country, it was there, it was real, it was around you. You could walk around and see slaves. Slavery, always bad. Just saying, in case that isn't obvious. But is it more, there are more slaves now than there's ever been. And not only that, is all of those slaves make all of our crappy plastic stuff. That is what's going on currently. So is it more moral to say that Thomas Jefferson, who would look out at his plantation and say slavery's wrong? Or is it more moral to be like, oh, well, it's like, or is it more moral to be like, oh, I would never do something as awful as own a slave, as you say, with your Nike shoes and your iPhone? And not that I don't have an iPhone also, but this is a very real issue that is not being addressed. Vegan with your, plastic shoes.
Well, it's because it's not in this country, yet we do business with the countries that do, it's like our politicians ignore China and the Uyghur slaves because it financially benefits them, and they just ignore that. So what's worse, the fact that they were ignoring that, or the founding fathers who said, this is a bad thing, but we're going to work towards getting rid of it, instead of, oh, let's make a deal with China because, we're just going to ignore their human rights violations because we get a good deal on products.
Right.
So our society is not so much, in some ways, we're not better than they were, because we don't acknowledge the fact that we have a long way to go. Now, the cancel culture, if you're not perfect, you're gone. They want you gone. No one's perfect. We have a long ways to go as a world and how we treat people. But this arbitrary line that you can't cross has got to go, where, there's a group that, gets to determine whether or not you're good enough. Like if you don't say the right things as a pattern designer on your website or, on social media, then they go after you for no other reason than because they don't like you. And
yeah, and the problem with that too is that because it's an arbitrary line that somebody drew, they're always changing the goalposts.
Changing the line.
You might be the darling today, but tomorrow you might step
Mom's
out of
coming
line
for
and
you.
then you're done. So yeah, we need people that aren't scared of just being themselves, because really, if you don't care, they can't cancel you. They've tried to cancel people who are like, I'm not doing that. And they aren't.
And it's people don't realize most of the people that jump on that bandwagon do it because of fear, because they don't want the mob to come after them. Like you'll see all these, when some big political thing happens in the knitting community, you'll see all these posts about it from people who never post on anything society or political, out of, that they it's because they don't want to be perceived as being on the wrong side of that arbitrary line, because they're afraid the mob will come for them one day. And that's just,
and there's some that do it even though they don't agree because they're scared of the mob. And that's the part that really got to stop, because why do you want to appease, why do you want to like them, why do you want them to like you? You're better than that.
Because life is a popularity contest, clearly, since social media came around.
Well, I guess
well,
that
it's kind of been that way, but
it has, but now when people can grade their keep track of their followers and the attention they get, and their, it's a very self-centered world.
It is
because of social media.
I went to a Christian school, and there were 20 kids in my class that graduated with me. And out of the 20 kids, I was one of the least popular. So I guess that's why I don't care, because I've never been popular. It doesn't. I
was in marching band. We were like,
top.
I was in marching band. We were not the popular kids. I mean, seriously, we knew that. So I mean, we're like the low end of the social scale there. So,
and I guess that's why we don't care.
And I put out my patterns, and if you don't want to buy them because you don't like me, that's entirely your right. I don't boycott. I don't publicly boycott, because I don't believe that you should go after someone's business necessarily because of things you don't agree with them. Now, if somebody's giving false advertising or a dangerous product, then yes, I would publicly say, hey, don't buy this product. But if I choose not to do business with someone, that's my personal decision, and it shouldn't influence other people's.
Right.
So,
and there's some people that, I have actually a couple of times said I don't personally buy from these people because of X, Y, and Z, mainly because they've come out and said that they don't like conservatives and not to follow them if you're a conservative. So I feel like people should know that.
But, but you're not telling other people not to buy from them, though. That's the difference.
Right. But yeah, I absolutely have a list.
Yeah. Or
of my own.
Well, everybody has a list of their own. Yeah. But you're not going around saying, yeah, I'm not going to buy from these people, and you guys shouldn't either. You're not doing that. You say you should make up your own choices.
I tend to come at it from an angle of see these guys, they're jerks. And, I'm totally okay with saying that. But I think the thing is that if I say these guys are jerks, and if you buy from them, if I no longer associate with you, that's where the line is for me. I'd be like, no, I disagree with your decision in buying from them, but I'm not going to ostracize you from the group. How dare you come forward with your, whatever yarn brand, pattern designer, something.
And there's always going to be yarn dyers that you can buy from. I mean, they might not be the yarn dyers, but some of them have the best colorways in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of these really popular yarn dyers, I don't care for their colorways anyway. So it's not like I would buy from them anyway, despite, them not wanting me to. But there's plenty of yarn dyers out there who want your business and who don't judge you by your politics. They just want your business. And as a pattern designer, I don't care who buys my patterns. As long as you're not trashing me online, and I don't care. When my first pattern was in Blocked magazine, the Block Tat, someone emailed me on Ravelry to see if I knew that he had taken my pattern to use for his magazine. And I didn't even respond because I didn't even know this person. They just you came into my email uninvited, so I don't owe you an answer because I don't know who you are. But it's no, they didn't steal my pattern. I gave it to him. I thought it was great because it was already out there called Blocked. So it was perfect for the magazine. But total stranger, did you know he stole? It's why would you automatically assume he did something nefarious? Did it never occur to you that maybe I worked with him? Because he clearly referenced my Ravelry patterns in the magazine. So obviously he didn't steal it from me. It's if you're going to accuse somebody of them, actually do your research. Because now everyone just, someone will say something against someone and people just pile on incredibly insane accusations. They're just made up. And we see it all the time in the knitting world. Somebody has a problem with somebody. Oh, well, they treated this person badly. And then 30 other people said, well, I heard they did this, or I heard they did this. So let's all boycott them. It's if you've had a bad experience, that's your bad experience. Other people might have had good experiences.
I'm always wary when all of a sudden somebody is not cool anymore, and then everybody has something to say about them. If they were as bad as you're making them out, we would have heard this a lot beforehand. But
Or
now
why
all
did
of
you
a
do
sudden
business with
they're
them?
not, right? But now they're not cool, so all of a sudden, oh yeah, I did that too. They did that to me, or crap.
That's
And they
because
all know
people are so focused on being part of the in crowd. They don't want to be perceived as not part of the right people. You know, you have to be like the pro-vaccine people were like, you had to be on that right side of history. And anyone who didn't was evil and gonna, you know, wanted to kill grandma. It's like everyone wants to belong to what they consider the right thing now, it seems like, and especially in the knitting world, because as soon as they go after one designer or one yarn dyer, they all pile on. And it's like, really, they couldn't have had all these bad experiences and still be in business.
right.
But
That's why Ann and I are working to cultivate a group of like-minded people that are uncancelable. You can come on, you can hate us, it doesn't matter.
Hate views are still views.
I like like-minded in the sense that you're willing to open discourse. You might disagree on things. Like none of us are going to agree 100%, even though if we have similar, you know, belief systems, but being willing to talk to people who disagree with you, but who can do it in a civil, respectful way. Fine with that.
And that's the thing. I mean, when I say we're building a like-minded community,
I
we're
know what you
building a
mean.
community of people who can get along together. And actually, one of our hate viewers mentioned something about how they didn't think that we would allow anybody on who didn't agree with us. And I want to say that's not true. I won't allow somebody on who's going to shout me down. But if somebody wants to come and talk to me who doesn't agree with me and they have a different viewpoint that they can articulate and we can discuss, they are welcome all day long. It's just there's a mentality now that if I don't agree with you, I'm going to shout you down until you capitulate and run away with your tail between your legs. And we're not doing that here. You don't have to be on the same page as us, but we need to be able to talk like adults.
I don't think they care if you capitulate. They just want to be seen as being the right person by yelling you down. It makes them feel better. Like, see, I'm doing the good thing. I'm doing the right thing. I'm going after the evil person. They don't even care if you agree with them at the end. They just want to be seen as, you know, I'm the one fighting the good fight. And I've seen so many knitting posts, like, especially since Neil has done blocked, some of the crazy, you know, things that they say about him and anyone who's in the magazine. And it's just like, really, did you even read it? Because if you read it, you'd realize, but no, of course they don't want to read it because then they might have to be open to changing their opinion. If they don't read it, then they can say nasty things about it all day long and with no, you know, they don't have to back it up because they won't read that because it's obviously white supremacist. Even though
it's not. I know it's awful by its reputation. So whatever you do, do not look at.
Yeah. I haven't read it, but I'm telling you it's bad.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite
go
review.
to this free magazine and
I know
with pattern. Read the articles.
Yeah, and it's
crazy.
horrible and awful. And so instead, go buy a $45 magazine that has the right thinking in it. So, you know, all good stuff.
Mediocre pattern.
I think I'm just gonna be an independent designer. I don't think I'm ever gonna get in the right magazines. So I'm not gonna even. I've tried. But, you know, they're not interested. I'm sure they look up your whatever and decide you're not woke enough because you're not posting those special things that, you know, and I don't have pronouns in my bio. I don't think so anymore. I did on Telegram. I don't know if I still do, but on Instagram, I don't because, you know.
Pronouns being beep, boop, bop, or?
No, I did not have them. That I didn't go full Gina Carano. But, which is another thing, you know, it's like she can say something that totally makes sense and then Pedro Pascal can defend the people that, you know, Kyle Rittenhouse killed, who are criminals
and pedophile,
but that's fine. You know, Disney just ignores that. It's like the double standard in the world. Just
if you're not on the right page, if you're not in the right dude, if you're not in lockstep with them, you're not worth it.
I mean, we've seen it with all these designers now who, you know, if you don't kowtow to their political opinions. They don't want to do business with you. And these yarn dyers don't want to do business with you. And I don't know a good business owner who tells people, you know, I don't want your money.
Yeah, I honestly wish that I had more business, but unfortunately, because I'm really, really out there conservative, I kind of shoot myself in the foot that way. But that's okay. I'd rather have people that are happy to buy my stuff than, you know,
Hey,
the masses.
I appreciate everybody's business, even though I'm not as published a designer as either Deplorable or Liz. But I appreciate every single one of you. And if you want to take my flag hat patterns and put whatever flag you like, if you're like, wow, I'm really going to tick Ann off, I'm going to do a rainbow flag or something and think that I'm going to hate it, man, good for you. Get out there and buy it.
Use your creativity. We support people being creative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to modify it and do whatever, you know, bless you, man. Get out there, make a hat.
Yeah, well, I have some patterns on Ravelry before I had my website, and I don't use Ravelry anymore very much. Like, I look up things, but I don't post on it because, you know, they really don't want people like us. Mm-hmm. But I figured as a designer, because I didn't have a website, while I might make a choice not to use Ravelry, other people might not make that choice or be at that point. And do I want to turn them down as customers? No. So I have patterns on there too. Going forward, they'll all be on my website. That's mainly so that I won't get kicked off at some point. Like if Ravelry actually goes in and really just, you know, gets rid of all of us, it won't affect me. Having control over your own website is better.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's crazy. You know, the political views can just go at people that you don't even, and it's like, it's this whole distance that social media gives you. You can say anything to anybody because there's no recourse. Like when I was growing up, we didn't have internet. So if you were going to insult somebody, you had to do it to their face or a landline. And so the consequences were they were going to punch you out or tell you, you know, there were immediate consequences for being a jerk.
And, or even the sort of whisper brigade of, well, I heard this about you. Then you could turn around and be like, hey.
Yes, but it had to be physical. Like there had to be a physical way to do it. And now with social media, people can be hateful and horrible and there's no recourse whatsoever. And they can say things that they would never say in person. And that's part of the problem because people are not the morals. And I don't mean religious morals, just the morals of society have gone, you know, treating people nice. It used to be Congress and the Senate, even if they disagreed politically, they were civil to each other. But now they call each other names like children on the playground. It's like, you're supposed to be adults leading a country.
They're supposed to be our leaders too. And so if we can't even be civil there, why would we expect anybody else to have any standards?
And there's so many knitting dyers and designers who've just been called horrible things. And then I know they're nice people. And the people calling them that don't even know them. But they're calling them such hateful, like white supremacist, racist. It's like, you don't know me. You don't live in my life. You don't know who is in my family.
About us. But they don't care because, as I've said all these times, once they call you that, it's really hard to disprove it. And so that's why they like to use the names. They just do anything they can that will stick.
And that's why you have to look at your online presence as not your life. Like I don't live my life online. So whatever happens, it's like whatever happens on Instagram, that's Instagram. And my life is what matters. So if you want to call me something on Instagram, fine. I don't care. It's not going to break me. I can walk away. I can close out the app.
It's like block you. I try not to block people, but once in a while, you know.
Yeah, your bullying is not going to hurt me because I don't take it personally because you're a stranger online. Now, if it was a family member or somebody I knew in person doing it, then I would feel something. But if it's a total stranger on Instagram who doesn't like my pattern or doesn't like the yarn dyer I used because they're a problematic dyer, well, then I don't care. Well, you're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine. If I want to, you know, make something that you don't like because it's patriotic or whatever, that's my choice. Exactly. Your opinion does not rule my life. And I think too many people live their lives that online opinions are more important than living their lives. And it's crazy. I've never had Facebook because I always felt like I'd rather just go live my life than talk about it.
Right.
And
Well,
I
it
get
is.
why people do, because you can keep in touch and everything. I'm not dissing Facebook. It's just that time I could spend actually doing things as opposed to talking about doing things. And so it just, people are so caught up in social media that I think they're losing out on living their lives. Like all the time some of these hateful people spend on social media criticizing our kind of people in the knitting world. Why don't you sit down and knit something? You could have finished a whole garment in the time it took you to make all these nasty comments and tweets. Like, why don't be productive about it? It's crazy. And with Neil, my God, some of the people going after him.
Well, it is, to kind of go back to the, purity test of a lot of this sort of liberalism, that it's the back and forth between, it's like, oh, I'm on the internet and I want people to like me on the internet. And you can't get people to like you on the internet unless you're out there and you're publishing content of some sort, tweets or Instagram photos or something. Doesn't matter what. But every time you do that, the internet is forever. And every single time it can come back and bite you. And it's not just oh, well, people are people, everything's okay. That it's very much that it is a purity test, and it's a purity test that can be retroactive. That something you say today can be great, but in 5 years it can be, ooh, that's a little too edgy of a joke, and you never know when it will hit.
Well, yeah, and it's like comedy used to be is okay to make fun of everybody. Mm-hmm. There were no bounds because it was an equal opportunity. Now you can't make jokes, you can't make fun of certain groups, you can't make fun of this, you can't make fun of that. And part of the reason why humanity has done so well is our ability to laugh at ourselves and not take ourselves too seriously. But now everyone takes themselves so seriously,
right?
Because they live for their followers.
Right. And with the taking yourself super seriously, and the it's almost that, I'm not saying that we shouldn't always strive to be the best people we can be, but it's the idea that with some cover, with some veneer, with some social media, version of myself, I can make it seem as if I am some sort of a perfect person, that exactly. I always virtue signal the right way, and I have correct opinions, and I have pretty photos, and I'm quirky and relatable, and I never make mistakes. And I can put myself out there, and the second I make a mistake, I'm actually ruined. And all that I've built up is suddenly destroyed. That you can't just be like, hey guys, I'm not perfect. I don't always say good. I don't always, say things that are clever. And sometimes I'm like, ooh, maybe that was a bit far. But hey, we're all human here. And that, even, it's been said before, but even if you're apologizing for a genuine mistake, well, they'll rip you up and down for that, and your apologies won't be good enough. That there's no except, that there's society's original sin. There's not an acceptance of the imperfection of humanity as a baseline.
Yeah, I mean, it's like people are so afraid to just be themselves, because that's not good enough. And that's part of what we're teaching our children, that they're not good enough. They have to have a persona. They have to have a social media influencer worthy persona. And it's like, no, just be yourself. Like my daughter, one of her best friends from middle school is blonde. And Allison she's very smart, like extremely smart student, but she's kind of ditzy. So the blonde joke's been a thing. So now they all come up with all the best blonde jokes because she wants to hear them, because she thinks they're hilarious. And it's like, she's embraced this whole dumb blonde thing, because she said, I could get offended by it, but instead I'm getting, laughter out of it. So hit me with your dumb blonde jokes, because I don't take them seriously. Right. And, that's their joke. Oh, it's just Allison. She's a blonde, and she'll be like, yeah, hi, I'm the blonde of the group. So, she doesn't take it herself too seriously. And too many people take themselves too seriously. Too many people in the knitting world who evidently speak for everybody. I speak for this group. I speak for that group. It's like, no, you don't speak for me. No. And I bet you don't speak for most of the people you think you speak for, because
I think a lot of people try to fit in and try to go along with it, even though they may agree with some of it, they may agree with all of it, but I don't think that, I mean, in our group, you see it all the time that we're not all exactly the same. And even though Ann and I agree on things, or Neil and I, it's not
fine.
always exactly what everybody thinks. And for people to just stand up and think that they are the mouthpiece is just ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's like, who appointed you the mouthpiece? Like, there's certain dyers that we know that are out there who, you know, always have to leave the charge on accusations. It's like, who voted you president of the offended club? Like, where do you get to speak for every other dyer or every other minority dyer, over this dyer, every that dyer? Like, you don't speak for every designer. I don't speak for every designer, but there's some designers out there who think they do.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I looked at your LinkedIn and press secretary for the press, not there. So
don't say that. They'll actually go get that title.
Oh, I mean, man. So well, who will pay them?
Well, we know that some people are getting paid to spout stuff like that too, don't we?
Yeah.
Well, you know, they'll
pay
ask
them
us
in
to
guilt
send
yarn
them
purchases.
Right. And you know, there's several people who tell us that because they're putting emotional labor in, we should pay them. So I mean, if they are the press secretary for the oppressed, I'm sure that their coffee will be listed right there for you.
I think a lot of the do the work yourself is because they don't know how to explain it themselves. So because it doesn't make sense to them either, but they just spout this line because they want to be part of the group. So when you question it and they say do the work, it's not because they want you to learn something. It's just because they don't understand it themselves. Like we've heard Carrie talk about that too. It's emotional learning. It's not factual. So a lot of them, they don't have a factual basis to actually explain anything. And you can call them on it sometimes too, when you ask them questions and then they have no idea. And then their first response is to start yelling at you, because that seems to be the best way, is to just yell at people.
Well, you know, when in doubt, shout someone down. There's a lot of stuff that we could keep talking about, but unfortunately we're running long. So check out Odyssey Tale by Cody Schlegel. It's an awesome non-woke book. Make sure you enter to win. I know, isn't it great? It's got like orange and yellow and purple and pink and blue speckles. I mean,
it's pretty.
Great yarn from
and
Chicken Lady.
One of our giveaways before, Liz. So
I did. Yes, I did a while ago. So thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. You guys are wonderful to talk to, and check them out when they do their lives, because you never know what's going to happen. And
that is true. And make sure you check out
having a live show. Oh no, what did I just say?
That's the best part of having a live show, because it's honest. You know, people are more honest when they're live and when they know that it's not going to be edited out. And luckily, the lovely people you have had on your panel don't care.
Exactly.
You know,
and one of the people that was on our panel is Chicken Lady. And so make sure you check her out and use the code PIK July 20 for 20% off.
Absolutely. She has wonderful yarn. And check out Murder Knits too on her podcast too. If you like true crime and knitting, you never know what's going to come out there too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also check out Liz Clothier at LizClothierDesigns.com.
Thank you.
She's got her patterns.
I do. I have patterns, and there'll be more coming out this fall. So
and
if you have any suggestion or ideas, I do have a newsletter. The first one will be going out in August. So if you go to my website and sign up to the newsletter, the first one will be going out in August, and there will be a free pattern in it for newsletter subscribers. Oh, and before I get with the carry-on hat, if you're in Carrie Smith's of Deprogrammed, if you're in her logos or in her subscribe star, and if you want the pattern, let Carrie know, and you'll be able to get the pattern for free. Because if you're already financially supporting her, then you can have the pattern for free.
Cool. So that's awesome. So,
yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us. And
thanks
for joining us.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Ann. Poor Ann. She's going to have alarms for everything now.
I know.
All right. We'll check you guys later. Don't forget to follow, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube and Rumble. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.